Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to another video. Today's a special day. It's my brother's birthday, and as a birthday gift, I'm gonna do a video on his gaming PC that he built at the end of 2002. The motherboard he used is from MSI, the KT3 Ultra or the MS6380E. It's got the latest BIOS, it supports DDR memory, it's got an AGP4X interface, PCI slots, USB, all the usual stuff is there. My brother's pretty organized, so he kept all the receipts, which made this project quite easy. It was easy for me to identify the parts and basically hunt them down on eBay. So the idea of this project is obviously to make his day, surprise him a little bit, but also for you guys to experience this machine. How did it perform at the end of 2002? The components are fairly low budget, so the plan is we're gonna install Windows, we have a look at the BIOS, we're gonna do some benchmarks and see what this machine can do, and then we're gonna have a look at upgrading it, picking some of the higher end parts that you could get at the end of 2002, and we're just going to compare how the upgraded machine performs to the original one. With the processor, the machine came with an Athlon XP 2000 Plus, and I got one off eBay. However, it turned out to be DOA, so we have to go with a substitute. It's the Athlon XP 1800 Plus, a little bit slower, but it's not gonna make too much of a difference because of the slow video card, which we will talk about later in the video. For the cooling, we're going to go with some classic MX4 cooling paste. Not too much, that's all we need. The Athlon XP 1800 Plus consumes a fair bit amount of power, so we're going to go with an Arctic cooling copper silent. Just going to be very gentle with these processors because they've got the die exposed, and we really don't want to chip off the corners of the die. So I'm just going to secure this cooler nice and tight, and we should be good to go. With the RAM, the machine that my brother had didn't really have a lot of RAM, only 256 megabytes, so that's what we're gonna go with initially. Roughly a year later, he upgraded the memory, got an additional 512 megabytes of DDR memory, and he also bought a new 17-inch CRT monitor. But for the time being, we're just gonna see how the machine performs with 256 megabytes. The video card is really basic. It's an Asus V8170 SE, and I believe this is a GeForce 4 MX 420, but we will have a look at the GPU set screen later. Now, apparently one of his work colleagues told him, you gotta get a GeForce 4, and of course he went for the cheapest option, which is unfortunately the GeForce 4 MX, which turned out not to be a proper GeForce 4, but really based on the GeForce 2, like a hybrid between the GeForce 2 and the GeForce 4. But yep, I found the card on eBay, and that's what we're gonna use, and we're gonna see how this machine performs with this GPU. For storage, the machine came with a Seagate Barracuda 4 with 60 gigabytes. I've got the same Barracuda 4, however it's got 80 gigs, so a little bit more, but otherwise it's gonna perform the same. And an optical drive, it also came with a floppy drive. We're not gonna bother with the floppy drive, but we'll definitely need the optical drive in order to install Windows onto this machine, and maybe also some games from CD-ROM. For the power supply, because this is a socket A machine with an Athlon processor, it draws most of the current from the 5-volt rail. So I'm going to go with an old school power supply that has a 5-volt rail with 35 amps. So this should be able to handle this processor just fine. Okay, so here's the finished machine ready to go. Just to summarize it, we've got a socket A motherboard with a VIA chipset. We've got 256 meg of RAM, an Athlon XP 1800 Plus. We've got a graphics card, a 80 gig Seagate hard drive, optical drive, and a power supply that can handle the 5-volt rail of the AMD Athlon processors. So yeah, next up is hooking up a monitor, turning it on, and see if everything works. Okay, so it's all hooked up. Let's turn it on and see what happens if we get a post screen. So the fans are spinning, that's a good sign. The monitor should get us a picture very soon. Okay, there's an alarm going off. CPU fan isn't running. Shutdown, no. I believe it's just that the CPU fan just runs a little bit too slow for the motherboard BIOS to detect it. Let's have a look in the PC health settings here. CPU fan detection, so I'm just going to turn that off because the fan is spinning. And there's actually, with the cooler in the manual, there's actually a note on that the fan spins so low that some motherboards actually don't detect it. Okay, next up I'm gonna hook up my capture card, and then we're gonna check out the BIOS, install Windows, and do all the other interesting stuff. Okay, here we are in the BIOS. So the first thing we're gonna do is load the defaults, and we're gonna load the performance defaults. We can see that the hard drive and the optical drive show up, so I just gotta plug in the date and the time. I don't have a floppy, so I'm gonna turn off the floppy drive. Let's have a look what else we need to change. Under integrated peripherals, I'm gonna turn off the floppy controller. Everything else I'm gonna leave on auto, but the USB controller I'll definitely turn on, and also the legacy for the keyboard, otherwise I can't install Windows. We have a plug and play operating system, so I'm gonna turn that on. Power management, there's nothing to change here, and I'll leave all that default. Yep, by SPT, that's all fine as well. And here we're just changing the boot sequence. So the first device we're gonna boot from the optical drive, then from the hard drive. I'm gonna disable that. Okay, let me just do a quick restart and see if everything checks out. There you go, so the processor is now detected. The memory runs at 333 megahertz, which is in sync with the FSB of the processor, and the hard drive and the optical drive get detected. Okay, so now we're just gonna install Windows XP. Okay, Windows is installed, so I'm just gonna do some general housekeeping, especially with the security. I'm gonna disable all the automatic updates and a few other bits and pieces. So it turns out the motherboard doesn't have USB 2, so I'm gonna get a PCI controller card because I need USB 2, otherwise it's gonna take too long to install all this stuff from my external hard drive. Okay, so the USB 2 card is working. Now we're just gonna install some drivers. First up are the VIA chipset drivers. So we're almost done. The chipset driver is installed. I just got to update the audio driver from the integrated sound card, which is a chip from Realtek, and then a USB Wi-Fi dongle. I'm going to use that because I've got a couple of games from Steam. Okay, next up we've got the NVIDIA video drivers. Let's have a look at CPU set. We've got the Athlon XP 1800 Plus running at 1.5 gigahertz. Here's the RAM, 256 megabytes, the motherboard statistics, and here's some information about the graphics card. And here we have a look at the video card. It's a GeForce4 MX420 and the slower SDR memory. This is what makes this video card so slow. So a GeForce 440 alone would have been quite an upgrade already. Okay, so all the benchmarks and games are installed. We're gonna run some benchmarks first just to get a few numbers, and then later we're gonna move to actual gameplay. In 3D Mark 2000 we're getting 6,494. And in 3D Mark 2001 we're getting 4,087 points. We're just gonna run the Quake 3 benchmark, normal details, but at 1024 by 768. We're getting exactly 100 FPS.
Quick, get behind me.
And in Draken we're getting basically 62 FPS. This is also at 1024 by 768. So here we are in Battlefield, getting around 40 FPS at 1024 by 768. I left all the details at the default settings. Bit of a hiccups in the beginning of the level when loading, very likely to do with only having 128 megabytes of memory, but otherwise it doesn't run too bad. 40 FPS is definitely playable, I would say. Now I know he really enjoyed playing Return to Castle Wolfenstein. Let's have a look at the details. By default, okay, it's at 640 by 480. Let's go with high quality, increase the resolution. We're gonna apply all those settings, and let's see how that impacts on the performance. There's another tab where you can turn on dynamic lighting that looks very nice, so we're definitely gonna turn that on as well. There you go, and that should look a lot nicer. Yeah, around around 30 to 40 FPS. So again, playable, but it's definitely not perfect, I would say. And yeah, we had just some loading hiccups again, probably because we only got 256 megabytes of memory. Okay, here we are in GTA Vice City. He also enjoyed this game a lot, so I'm just gonna increase the resolution to 1024 by 768. We're gonna leave the details the way they are. And yep, let's start a new game and see what it's like. Alrighty, here we go. So this game is capped at 30 FPS and it seems to be able to hold the performance right up there. Again, a few loading stutters because of the lack of RAM, I believe. Alright, let's go into options and let's crank up the view distance and see what impact that has on the performance. So the draw distance, let's max that out. And go back into the game and let's see what happens. So yeah, it does look a little bit nicer, but yeah, performance is fine. It does dip below the 30, so it's not perfectly smooth, but it's definitely playable and not as bad as I feared it would be. Okay, this is Aliens vs Predator 2. It's all maxed out. Yep, we're gonna go with that. Alrighty, so around 20 to 30 FPS. Let me just switch my weapon and off we go. Yeah, around 30 FPS, so that's also at 1024, 768, all maxed out. Where did that alien go? Hang on, should be one over here. Okay, this is No One Lives Forever 2, and this game definitely seems to struggle a little bit more. We're getting around, yeah, 20 FPS thereabouts.
Careful! Enemies can hear any sound you make, so learn to move. That hurt! Your footsteps give you away, but you can sneak to tread softly. Keep in mind that certain material...
Need for Speed Underground to 1024 by 768 and high details. Let's go with that. We're just gonna start a quick race and see what the performance is like. We're getting around just over 20 FPS, so yeah, that is also one of the more demanding games for this computer, that's for sure. So it will be interesting to see how the machine handles it once we upgraded some of the components. And here we have Mafia, also runs at 1024 by 768. Runs not too bad, around 20 to 30 FPS, so definitely playable, but will be interesting to see what the upgraded performance is like. Here we are playing Medal of Honor. That game definitely struggles with getting around 20 to 30 FPS. And a few loading skips as well. It's definitely not smooth.
Pick up that half-track! Use your panties rack!
Okay, so we had a look at the performance. The machine actually does not too bad in the games, but obviously it can be better. And something that hasn't come through in the video are the loading times with 256 meg of RAM. Yes, there were stutters in the game, but just quitting the game or trying to load the game takes quite a bit of time. Now, the motherboard we're not gonna change. It's fine, and we can put in a range of processors. So, but we will upgrade the CPU. The top CPU that the motherboard supports is the Athlon XP 2600 Plus. I don't have that processor, so we're going for the 2400 Plus, which runs at 2 gigahertz. I've also upgraded the RAM with a single stick of 1 gigabytes, and for the graphics we're going with a GeForce 4 Ti 4400. Now, there would have been a faster choice with the Radeon 9700, but my brother is more into Nvidia, and I would have probably recommended Nvidia as well. Just less issues and more maturity, and a happy brother is a good brother. So that's what we're gonna go with. So we're just gonna run the benchmarks and see how they compare. So we're getting 12,555 points in 3D Mark 2000 with the upgraded system. And we're getting 10,784 in 3D Mark 2001. In Draken we're getting 88.96 frames per second. And in Quake 3 we're getting 197.7 FPS. Okay, let's check out the same games we tried before. We're starting with Alien vs Predator 2, and the loading times are much better. So compared to before, everything just loads very quickly. Most of this is because of the 1 GB of memory. Okay, so that plays a lot smoother, 60, 70 FPS depending on which way we're looking. Let me just swap the weapon, and there should be an alien popping up right over there. So that plays a lot better than before. Ooh, there's another one. There you go. Okay, here we are in Battlefield, and it seems this game is capped in regards to the FPS. The loading stutters are somewhat, yeah, they're kind of gone. It's definitely very fluid, but yeah, there seems to be an FPS cap. If you know how to remove that, do let me know. 40 FPS is quite odd. Usually it's 30 or 60 FPS, but yeah, otherwise it seems to be running quite well. And here we are in Need for Speed Underground. This is all maxed out, all the details, and a 1024x768. Still a little bit sluggish, so it's not running at 60 FPS or beyond, but certainly it's a lot smoother than it was before. But yeah, this seems to be one quite demanding game, that's for sure. And here we are in Medal of Honor. Well, that game runs a lot better than it did before, that's for sure. Zoomed in, the FPS do tank a little bit, but when not using the scope, it's actually quite smooth and definitely a lot easier to play. And we're back in No One Lives Forever 2. The FPS also a lot nicer, 60, 70 FPS, around about that, so pretty good. Some dips below 60 FPS when there are some special effects going on, but otherwise this game is greatly improved compared to before. And details are maxed out, so there's lots of options to tweak the performance. And here we are back in Return to Castle Wolfenstein. Runs very well, almost maxed out. We're getting 90, 91 FPS, which is the maximum. There's a way to get rid of that FPS limit, but really 90 FPS is all we need. So yeah, definitely a huge upgrade, and this game runs a lot better than before. And here we are in Mafia. We're getting around 40 FPS, so that's also greatly improved. Not quite sure what is holding back this game, if it's the GPU or the CPU, but regardless, it's quite a significant improvement. And here we are in GTA Vice City. So we had some hiccups basically when playing the game before, with some dips below. It's still going on a little bit. It does dip under the 30 FPS, but nothing too major. And the big loading skips, they are definitely gone. It definitely seems to be quite smooth. The FPS is capped. There's a setting to get rid of the FPS cap, but I believe you get some glitches with the physics engine. At least that was the case with GTA 3 as far as I know. But yeah, once again, also a nice upgrade, and especially the loading times are a lot reduced and make this game a lot smoother and yeah, better to play. And there you have it, guys. So this was the PC my brother had in 2002 with a few upgrades. He actually did end up getting a GeForce 4 in the end. He went with a GeForce 4 Ti 4200, the 64 megabyte version, and I believe the 64 megabyte version was actually slightly higher clocked. And this is the test machine. We've got the Ti 4400 here. This is the USB 2 card and the XP 2000 Plus processor with a gig of RAM. And you could see the difference quite noticeable in most of the games. However, some of the more demanding games, they still struggle, so something much faster is required for that. And eventually he got a 6600 GT, and then also I think I pushed him or recommended him to go with the Athlon 64 because the socket A was really holding back that GeForce 6 GPU, and he did, and I remember him playing Doom 3 quite vividly and having a good time. So that's it, guys. Let me know what you think of this system. What did you have in 2002? And yeah, what parts did you pick? How was that year for you? What games did you play? All the usual stuff. That's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you soon with another video.